Brian Clapp, got it. Brian Clapp, the VP of Content and Engaged Learning at Work in Sports, and Michael Jett, the Assistant Director of Game Presentations and Championships at the NCAA. So really great group here. We will start off with just kind of a quick introduction of each panelist. If you guys want to give us your background, and how you got to where you are today. So we'll start with Michael.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Hey, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. As Chris said, I'm at the NCAA right now. Real quick background for me. Grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. Went to undergrad at Miami University, the real Miami, in Ohio. Did a year of event management, game ops my senior year when I was there, and then applied for grad school, which I got into Ohio State. So went to Ohio State for sports management. Before grad school, the summer before, I actually did a 3-month internship at the University of Toledo in development. So did a couple donor events. Still wasn't sure what I wanted to work in. So if y'all feel the same way, that's totally fine. And then once I got to Ohio State, had some folks come and talk to our class and ended up getting an internship with the marketing fan experience department at Ohio State, and interned there for 2 years. Had somebody leave after my first year, so they asked me if I wanted some more responsibility. Was able to kind of oversee some sports, some smaller ones. My second year there at grad school, field hockey, swim and dive, outdoor track and field. And then my second year in Columbus, also interned at the Ohio High School Athletic Association, doing sponsorship and marketing. Got to produce high school championships, including the basketball championships that were at the Shot there in Columbus at the time. So then kind of at that point decided I want to stay marketing on campus, and got a promotions assistant position at the University of Georgia. So I was there for 2 years, oversaw the marketing efforts for a few sports. My favorite was probably equestrian at Georgia, which for those of y'all that have never experienced equestrian, advised to go. They're longer than football games. They're pretty nuts. Pretty nutty sport. Not an NCAA sport though, so that's my main objective right now, being at the NCAA. But was there again 2 years, and then ended up leaving, going to University of Missouri. Was there for 3.5 years. Oversaw the marketing efforts for volleyball, women's gymnastics, women's basketball, and baseball. And then got an opportunity here at the NCAA. My favorite part on site was or on campus, excuse me, was the game presentation, the kind of production side, the live event production side, not kind of the marketing side. So the position at the NCAA then is basically all of that. It's all the game press side. It's, overseeing the run the show and script from a video board standpoint, overseeing, all the fun stuff we get to do to enhance the experience, not only for the fans, but the student athletes. So get to kind of oversee all of that. The championships I currently work on are Division I men's soccer, FCS football championship, the Division I women's basketball championship, and Division I women's gymnastics, and then Division I women's softball. So I get to go on site for the final site for those championships, and then also work with hosts. So that includes, Chris and his staff at Penn State when they get selected to host as a non-predetermined site, and work with those schools on giving them content and kind of to run a show from it, since it is an NCAA event, even though they're hosting it for us. But yeah, so that I won't get into the weeds on that. But yeah, so currently at NCAA doing game pres for a handful of championships. So it's super cool.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Brian, you're up next.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Thanks again for inviting me. And good evening, everyone. I started out in the industry in the sports broadcasting side. So I was a producer at CNN Sports Illustrated, and then a coordinating producer, and then left to go to, so I was there for about 8 years, and then went to Fox Sports Northwest, where I was the news director. So I was running the entire production department, all of our journalism side, hiring and firing, staff improvements, et cetera. Loved all of that, but realized where a lot of my true passion lie was in helping young people develop in their career. I really liked working with the interns. I really liked working with entry-level staffers, try to train them up and get them to a point where they could really soar in their career. So I moved to work in sports about 8 years ago, getting out of the live production side and getting out of being on the beat covering a team or a regional sports network, and really have now leaned into content creation that helps people get started in their sports careers. So I'm the host of the Work in Sports podcast, which helps to explain the extremely large microphone. I had Chris on my show once, so that was a bang up episode. But really just trying to help give people guidance into their careers. This is a perfect platform to be able to get in here and help out as best we can.
Thank you, Brian. And Tangela, if you'd like to go, and I saw Amy jumped on too, so you can. We'll kick it over to Amy right after you introduce yourself.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening. I am Tangela Cheatham. I currently serve as Deputy Athletics Director for Administration. Also have the Senior Women's Administrator designation here at Central Michigan University. I joined the team here in July because I got to talk with Amy, who you'll get to hear from. But I started my career in student athlete development. So I always knew I wanted to work in sports. I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally. Loved the Pistons growing up, and I decided I wanted to work in sports. So when I went to undergrad at Michigan, I got involved with football recruiting. And then I had friends who were student athletes, and I didn't understand how they were expected to be successful with all of the things they had on their plate. So I became an advocate for them, encouraged them to advocate for themselves, and then decided to pursue a career doing just that. But I studied business in undergrad and always wanted to be able to apply that to the day-to-day. So love being student forward facing, and I still do work to get out and visit with my teams. But knew I wanted to, ascend toward senior level administration. So went to Oklahoma for grad school, interned at NACMA. So that was a great stop for me. Got to meet a lot of people. This industry is hugely based on not only who you know, but who knows you, right? I know Beyonce, she does not know me. So it's always nice to have folks who can advocate for you. So had a stop at Iowa after that, working in academics and career development, stop at West Virginia, overseeing a few areas, student athlete development, a few sports, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. West Point had to stop there. And then now I am back in the state of Michigan, in Mount Pleasant, not necessarily at home, but I have a good opportunity to oversee our internal operations, directly impacting the student athlete experience, which I'm sure Amy will talk some about as far as her vision for the department and kind of how we strive to provide, a next level experience for our student athletes. So hopefully that's not too long of an introduction.
No, that's great. Thank you. And Nicole, you can kind of take it away, and we'll have our interview with Amy.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Hi, Amy. We are so excited to have you on. Thank you so much for taking some time to be with us tonight. So what we'll do is we'll take about 5 minutes of your time and kind of would love to hear your career path. So what I would like is for Amy Fullen, Vice President and Director of Athletics at Central Michigan University, to start out by telling us a little bit about yourself. How did you get your start? How did you get to where you are now? And talk about focusing on building your resume and how that assisted you in your career growth, please.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to keep this short, but it's a challenge because getting old here. But I'm excited to be here tonight. I really believe this business is about people. So as much as you guys are focused on your resume, I think if you surround yourself by working for good people and put good people on your teams, that really just happens if you plant yourself where you are and you do a really good job. I've heard it from some of the people already talking, but I probably had no chance. My parents thought they could have no kids. They were both Irish Catholic and the oldest is 6. And then they had me and they were so excited. They're sports fans. So we used to listen to University of Maine Orono hockey games and they'd read me books before I was born. So the student athlete part started right before I entered this world. But they had 3 girls. My dad wanted some sons, didn't have them. And we played a lot of sports. And so when I was in college, I actually played soccer at the University of Connecticut. I thought I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And ESPN being there, it was great excitement, and realized that, it wasn't quite for me when I did some internships, but I loved Noreen Morris, who a lot of you probably know in the business. She was the first person to come up to me as a student athlete and say, hey, how can I help you? What can you do? So I realized that those little moments also make a big difference in people's lives, because it has in mine. And I started to figure out, hey, I think I might want to be an AD. And somebody laughed at me and said, there's like 4 women that are ADs. That's never going to happen. I'm pretty stubborn, being Irish Catholic. So I dug my heels in and I said, I'm going to do that. So I really just looked at a path, and Noreen was a great mentor, but a lot of people along the way, I'd say, hey, I think I want to be an AD. And they would say, hey, you should work for these people, or you should go to this place and get this experience. I started in compliance, was at the University of Georgia for grad school, then went to the NCAA. At the NCAA, the people at Georgia said, hey, Texas has a job opening. I ended up getting that job at Texas, was there for 18 years. And knew I was going to be an AD. I started in compliance on the internal side, then got more administration, then eventually went to external and got my job at CMU here about 18 years later. So I was a slow start, guys. I started in 1996 and I got here now. But really, it's good people and great places. And I think places are people. So I've been fortunate. I've worked at Georgia, Texas, NCAA, but I also think places can change if not the right people are there. So, you know, we have a lot of special things going on. And that's kind of one of the things that brought me to CMU is go to good places with good tradition and good people and learn from good people, and good things will happen for you.
What is one thing or maybe two things you would tell your younger self looking back on your career?
I would tell my younger self, I think follow your passion. I think there's some things about this industry, like probably the work-life balance. There's not much, depending on what role you want to be, but we all know that it's not the normal job. But I think I love it. And being a student athlete is a transformative experience for me. And so a lot of times I think I'm a giver and I want to give back. So it wouldn't change anything, but I think I would have thought about it differently, but I'd probably end up in the same place. And then my younger self, I think it is follow your passion and be with good people. And I think I got that advice young. So when I go back to my younger self, I was always seeking to learn from others. I think it's continuous learning. I still learn every day, bring people like Tangela to, you know, bring their diverse experiences and backgrounds and teach me and make me better. So even getting to the AD chair, you're always learning, you're always getting better. That's why good people and following your passion is important, because it'll make you get up every day. And these jobs are demanding, but they're so rewarding. There's a lot of jobs that are boring. And I've met people that have left really high paying jobs because we all know it and see it. We're pretty lucky. It's pretty awesome to be around the student athletes, people that are passionate about their university and kind of getting to ignite all those things and continuing to transform lives. So if you love it and you know it pretty fast, it is pretty demanding, but it's very rewarding too. And that's what I love about what we do every day. You do see the impact on young people and universities. I mean, I even see it with older folks when you get them a gift that they get to put their legacy on and leave an impact that continues to give to the younger generation and their family. So there's so many things about our job, and it is core of people. And it's doing some pretty awesome things that leave lasting impacts that will live well beyond our lifetimes and leave a legacy.
And the last question is, you talk a lot about people and the people business. What other piece of advice or little nugget would you leave these folks that are just beginning their careers within college athletics?
So I think one of the things is I saw early on that I think you're just genuine. And if you do the right things every day, I said this, but I can probably illustrate it best this way. So when you're at Texas, you know, the football coach, men's basketball coach, Texas or anywhere in this business, people think, oh, you're going to make those people really happy. And I did. Like, some of those people are great, but everybody matters and every little thing matters. Probably getting the job here at CMU was as much about the men's golf coach at Texas as it was anybody. There's a very prominent family in this community that the men's golf coach was at New Mexico before Texas. And the family's son played for that coach. And so I say it's about people, and you could try to strategize and do your resume and think, oh, this is going to get me there. But I can't go back to tell you it's the big and the small things, and just be yourself, be around good people. And you can't strategize to get there. I guess I just illustrate that with, you know, you're just with the men's golf coach because it's the right thing and you care about everybody and you care about people. But if you don't do those things, people see through it, and it does come back to get you. It is a small world. So I just try to give that specific example about it all matters, and just be yourself and treat everybody right. And the small things will reward you along the way.
Great advice, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us. And you're welcome to stay on and have more conversation about resume building, but we know how busy you are and we sincerely appreciate you taking the time. So good luck with everything, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
I appreciate the time, and Tangela is much better than me, so you all are in good hands.
Thanks, Amy. Really appreciate it. I was a little sad when I found out that Michael was a Ohio State grad and Tangela is a Michigan grad. But I'm a UConn grad, Amy. So I'm glad we've got some support here. So appreciate it.
I love that. It's even worse. She's an Oklahoma grad too.
Oh, jeez.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you again. Okay, guys, we are going to jump into our topic here. And the first question is very easy to answer, I'm sure. How do you approach building your resume and customizing it as you kind of embark on this job search time in your career? So we didn't have an order, but so if whoever wants to speak up and kind of take the lead, you're welcome to. Brian, you've already got your microphone off, so I'm going to have you.
Put me in front of a microphone. All right, so I could go on for this sort of stuff for a long time, so I'm going to try to condense as much as possible. But what I think one of the most important parts of your initial process here is to reverse engineer it. You have to understand the demands of the marketplace and where you want to go, and then customize your resume to fit that based on your skill profile. So let me walk through this and make that all make sense, because it probably just sounded like a bunch of words. But if you determine that you want to work in sports social media, let's say, you should be making sure that you are looking at job descriptions, people trying to hire social media coordinators, understand what the requirements of those roles are, what skills they want you to have, and then either making sure that you have a game plan together to learn the skills you don't have, or making sure those are elevated enough on your resume. Because what happens is your resume goes into, most often, an applicant tracking system, which is going to do a filtering process to determine if you're a match for the job that is out there. If you don't elevate the skills that are instrumental for that job you are going for, if you don't have versions of your resume, if you don't customize it for the market demand, then you fall into the netherworld of non-existence and the hiring manager doesn't even know that you're there. So you got to make sure you're doing a little bit of effort into what those jobs are that you're targeting and what the skills are that they want to make, that they want you to have, and make sure that they are elevated and part of your resume so that you can be discoverable. See, I wrapped that into that was like a minute. That was
great.
I can go long-winded, but I'm going to try to keep it tight.
That was great.
Actionable advice. That's what we're going for.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah. First off, Chris, I grew up a Penn State fan, FYI. I don't root for Ohio State, so I'll just put that out there.
Thank you.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, Brian said part of this, and I'll dive a little more. Like tweaking your resume to what you're applying for is a big deal. Like reading, if you already have some, experience, and then you want to apply for a job, and read through that job description and using some of those words within your resume, like especially the action verbs, so like using that in your resume and stuff you've done, so they can see, hey, this person's already done, these 3 things at this job or at that job. Like that's a big deal. So definitely reading through the job description and tweaking and tailoring your resume to each job, I think is the most important of any advice you might get tonight, to be honest. I think making sure you list, all the experiences you do have. I think everybody on here is really young, so I think don't be afraid to list everything you've done. I think that I know like some people think 1 page is all you should do on the resume. When I was coming up from Ohio State and then even at Georgia, like my resume was 2 pages because I was told to make sure you have everything you've done on there, so that people know you have a lot of experience. Like make sure you have everything you've done on your resume, because you're trying to sell yourself, you're trying to get these jobs. So don't be afraid. I mean, I've seen too many times where I've seen a really vague bullet point, like, created playlists and graphics to play games or something. Like you need to, be more specific in what you did, like developed, video board still graphics to play, at men's and women's basketball games. Like, stuff you need to be super specific, I think, and not vague on your bullet points too within your resume when you're filling it out.
Perfect. And following both of those pieces, I would add, it's good to know what you don't want to do as much as what you do want to do. So I would say as you're early in your career, interning, being a graduate assistant, entry level, it's always great to volunteer for opportunities in other units. So if you're in development, maybe you have some interest in marketing, or you want to see what student services is like, or you have some questions about compliance. I think it's always great to go and talk with people, get a better understanding of what they do, because you may think you want to be, insert job title, but until you actually go out and say, oh, no, it's actually not what I thought it was, and then you can put more time into actually developing what you do want. So that's one of the main things I would say is, go out, get some opportunities, volunteer for things. I know we're in a space where we can get paid for a lot of things. We can force kind of the issue with that, but don't undervalue the importance of going out and raising your hand and say, hey, I'll help, with this, track setup or gymnastics setup or whatever it is that kind of needs all hands on deck. And then kind of echoing off of what do you keep on your resume? I'm a fan of keeping a running document of every job I ever had, and then tailoring it to the opportunity. So I'm not a one-page resume person necessarily, but as you get more experience that's relevant to the opportunities you're looking at, you can cut and paste, and you don't have to try to remember, what did I do back in 2008? I don't know if anyone here was doing anything other than maybe the panelists in 2008 involving a resume. But I just wanted to say that as well. So figure out what you don't want by volunteering, getting experience, and you may be exposed to something that you didn't know you were interested in. I think that answers kind of that question we had.
Chris, can I slide in one more point in there too?
Yeah,
I think one thing that everybody should be very aware of with your early resume, you don't have to go in perfect consecutive order. And here's what I mean by that. If you intern this summer for the Indianapolis Colts, go back to campus and you're working your fall job as a waiter in town or something of that nature, don't put the waiter job first. Put the most relevant, powerful information up top. Later on in your career, when you have a lot of different things, you're going to want to be in consecutive order and you're going to want to stack those things up. Right now, you want to get through to people and you want to make sure the best and most important thing you've done is highlighted, because I know I talked about applicant tracking systems briefly, but if it's not an applicant tracking system and it's a real human, they're going to take 7 to 15 seconds looking at your resume. Don't bury the lead. Make sure you have it up near the top. So put your best stuff and make sure it's highlighted.
Yeah, that's great advice from everybody. Thank you all. I'm a big proponent too of the long working document of all the experience that you have, and then custom building each resume for that specific one. And I know a lot of you are students still and are working to that point, but you'll get there. And then that's a great strategy. I wanted to follow up on one of the points that was brought up and Michael brought this up about the bullet points and when you're describing your work. So I want to jump ahead to this question. What's a good strategy for writing effective bullet points to describe various work experiences? What's the best tactic for listing a position that might not relate to sports, but you think has a lot of value? So those are two kind of questions, but whoever wants to start can start. Brian, once again, you've got your
I got a smirk going. I start smiling when I get it. Well, okay. So I think one of the most important points you can all try to pull into your resume for every experience is data, metrics. Show me something. Give me a proof of concept. You raised Twitter followers by 25% by taking a high touch action plan, whatever. You reduced revenue by 17%. You increased open rates for a marketing campaign by 32%. Give me something that's proof of concept. And I can show you side-by-side versions of resumes of people who say, these are the things that I did. And then there's somebody else that's like, here's the cause, the effect, the data, the follow-up. This is what it has more power to it. So in your bullet points, I think for every opportunity that you have, you should have at least one that has a data point in it, some sort of metric that is proof of concept, tangible. What I'd advise you on is the only way you're going to be able to get those kind of data points, and you can get really creative in the way you use data and the way you track things. But when you do an internship, take some baseline data from the beginning so you have something to compare it to at the end. So there's a little bit of front end work you have to do as you accumulate some meaningful moments. I'm telling you, if I'm looking at one resume and it says beat my sales quota by 100%, over broke sales, my call data, I made 120% of the required calls. to close X amount of deals. Those sort of things speak to me more than I worked on the sales team and sold tickets. And I've seen both things in resumes from the same level of experience. So it's all how you phrase the impact of what you're doing. And data does that.
Michael, Tangela, any follow-ups?
I definitely agree with Brian, like, from a sports to like certain departments like marketing, you could use attendance numbers, social media, obviously like engagement, followers, if you help internet development and you help raise, more money, stuff, all that stuff's good to use for sure. And then I'd go for the bullet point, other stuff I'd say, like, try not to, this kind of delves into some of my pet peeves too a little bit, but definitely, don't use the same, I think, like, action words throughout your whole resume. Like, definitely mix it up. Like, don't say assist and help all the time. Like, definitely change up the words. Make sure you're using a lot of different words there, like collaborate, and like, that stuff's important. Like, achieve this, like, that stuff's, instead of just throwing in, your basic, I worked this, I helped with that. That kind of doesn't come across super well. So definitely look to use, some good words, some different words in your resume, kind of explaining what you did. And then lastly, I'll say, I think, Chris, you did mention too some jobs that aren't sports related. I think transferable skills, such a big deal, like stuff, that you did, Brian mentioned, if you had actually had a server job, you were doing an internship over the summer, like, if you are a server, but then you want to apply for a sales job, like, you have a lot of, transferable experience there with like talking with people. So to make sure you really think about, if it's not a sports job, what you've done on it and the transferable skills, because there's a lot of pieces there that apply to, jobs within sports that you can use on your resume that will come across really well.
Yeah, sports is just a big business. I mean, other jobs transfer perfectly into the sports world.
I don't have much to add, but I will piggyback off of those action verbs that you mentioned, Michael. I think very important to diversify what you're doing, not just assisted, led, collaborated. You can use assisted, but just a good amount of those action verbs to show what you did, how you took leadership, how you helped something come across, right? So I think that's really important. And then also, I'm really big on kind of consistency, which I think we'll get into some of that. But, if you have your bullet points, are they paragraph format? Are they true bullet points? Is there a period there? What are we doing? So, and I like also having some consistency with each position. So not necessarily 15 for one job and then 3 things for another. But again, that's a personal preference. And I do look at resumes and I have the opportunity to hire people these days. So just wanted to share that, but definitely personal preference.
Someone brought up a question about
Did he only cut out for me, or is that in my head?
No, I can't hear.
No, he cut
Okay,
off.
good. Phew. Thought I was having a seizure. Chris, you cut it. Your mic went out.
Oh wait, I don't know
We
which
can't
one he
hear
was
you.
going for. Were you going for the first one?
I'm
I
here.
think,
Hello?
Oh, there you
yep,
are. We got
it.
you.
Hello.
We
I
heard
don't know
you.
what happened. Not good. Not good for the host. So can you hear me? I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Cool. So someone asked about like putting relevant coursework in resumes, and I responded back, saying that for me, like in the beginning, sure, but as you start to gain experience, like I'm more concerned about the experience wise. But if you guys want to touch upon that, and also maybe some of the kind of the pet peeves or stuff that might turn you off in a resume, that people should kind of be aware of.
I can jump in. I would say same. So as you're gaining experience, sure, you can leave your relative coursework on there, but as you get more experience, I would suggest kind of moving that off. If you get an opportunity to interview and have conversations, you can bring up some of those things and some of the examples and conversations that you have. But as you get more experience, move that off, as well as like high school information. I think generally after your sophomore year of college, you should be in a space where you can move some of those high school positions off of your resume. And again, that's what the interview is for, where you can talk about some of the things that you got experience in prior to starting your college career, your interning opportunities, graduate assistantships, all of those things. So that's what I would say as it relates to coursework. And then on pet peeves, I think I already shared one. I like consistency. So if you're putting periods after your bullets, then there should be periods after your bullets at all times. I'm also not the biggest fan of objectives on resumes at this point because I like to skim. And for the most part, if you're applying for the job that I have posted, then I would assume you're looking to get the job that I've posted. So it does take up some space as you're looking to build your resume. But it's not really the biggest thing. Also, references available upon request because I do assume that if I ask for references, you will provide them. So I even go with providing the references that you will provide upon request. So I'll share those things. And I see Brian nodding there, so I'll pass it over because it looks like he has a good thing.
Oh no, I was just being your fanboy because I loved everything you were saying. I thought that was so spot on. I cannot stand mission statements or objective statements because most people don't know how to write them. They write them about what they want. They say something like, I want to use my college degree to land a position in college athletics and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I kind of figured that you're applying for this job. Like, unless you can phrase it in a way that is telling what you would bring to the table and what will make you a good candidate and how you're going to raise the bar for the organization, put yourselves in the shoes of the employer. They have a problem at their organization. They have a gap. They have something they need filling. They need a role to be backfilled, whatever it may be. You have to convince them you're the one to fill it, and telling them that you want this job isn't an effective use of space. So I'm so with you on that. I'll just throw one other. You took a lot of the great pet peeves. I have a lot though. One of the other ones, when people put their picture on their resume, you're basically telling me that I should hire you because you're cute. And that's not the reason. I know so many people that are in talent acquisition or that are in HR that they will cover up people's names, any of that stuff, because they want to make a decision based on who you are and what you represent and your skill set and what you bring to the table and your experiences, not your name, not any kind of preconceived bias, not what you look like. So don't do that stuff. You put somebody in a very awkward position of feeling like they might be making a biased decision, and they don't want that. So just don't put your picture on your resume. They can look you up on LinkedIn. They want to see what you look like. Give them an option. I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, yeah, that's all good stuff. The one pet peeve I'll add, and it kind of hits Tangela's consistency. That's point. If you have multiple things like experiences, jobs on your resume, there's a few things that you aren't doing anymore, like just making sure it's in the right tense when you write it. So in the past tense, and then your current position is in the present tense. Something minor, but that's something I definitely look for, and I know I'm not the only one that looks for that, just kind of off the bat. But then I will, since I got the floor here, Kirsten's question, I think that was a little bit up at the top about references, since it kind of tangentially talked about that for a sec. So she asked, is it necessary to have reference for each of your three most recent jobs, even if your best are all from one place? So I mean, I personally don't think it is, but I will say you will get asked probably about why you don't have a reference from your most recent job, especially if it's your most recent, and they'll find a way to get in touch with somebody there probably anyways. So I'm not saying you have to list. I probably wouldn't not list two places, but I don't think it's mandatory. But they'll ask about it, and then they'll probably get in touch with them anyways. So
references too is when you call someone's reference, you know what you're going to hear.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, put your best friends up there. Sure. But people are going to end up calling people who they know at the places that you work, and they'll find out about you that way. So the best way to get a good reference is to be a good person and make everybody, have nice things to say about you, because I know when I'm calling a reference for someone, it's they're great. I mean, I'd hire them in a second. We just got a beer last night. Because you guys are like buds. But I don't know.
They're gonna go through your social channels.
They're
gonna go through your social channels before they're gonna call references.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Any other hot thoughts on references before we jump to the next one?
I say one technique that I've seen recently that I actually really like is people including a testimonial essentially at the bottom of the resume, rather than wasting that space on references available upon request or whatever. I've seen actually people put in a quote or a testimonial from somebody, and you absorb that as you're looking through their resume, and you see who it's from, and it's from an athletic director, or it's from somebody who has a power position, and that carries some weight. That brings some credibility to it right there. So I've seen that technique used in a one-liner kind of testimonial, and I found it really effective. So just an idea out there.
So that's a great segue that we didn't plan, Brian. No,
Glad to
we're just on the
help.
same page. What are some things that you all have seen on resumes that were noteworthy, that were kind of outside the box, or if we're not putting our photos on there and dressing it up with all sorts of colors and logos, what are some things like what you just mentioned, Brian, that could actually get your attention and give you a leg up on some other people? Who wants to talk, Brian?
Well, I kind of gave my one of them, but I will say I think I don't even think I kind of mandate to people that you need to have multiple versions of your resume. So you have one that you're going to give to people, or like an email as an attachment, which might be fancy formatting. It might have nice logos on it. It might have cool colors to it. It looks really nice and presented. It's visually appealing. You might bring it to a career fair with you. Those are great, but you need to have a separate version, which is more of a stripped down version, which is for those applicant tracking systems. So my point of creativity is more of, I've seen some really cool looking formats out there. I've seen some logos, I've seen some testimonials, I've seen some nice fonts. Those all really pop when I'm looking at it mailed to me as a PDF or whatever. But don't get too married to that version, because if you submit that via an applicant tracking system, it comes across looking like absolute gobbledygook. It is a messy system. And Chris, can I actually share my screen real quick, and I'll share this because I think a visual kind of helps. Is that all right? Is that breaking any rules?
No, it's not. Can we, Nick or Cindy, can you make him a co-host?
Oh,
We'll let you know.
I'll just share it super fast. I won't waste your time with it too much.
You
but-
should be, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
No.
Okay, so here is a nicely formatted resume, right? I covered the person's name up, but you can see University of Missouri, they've got all this great experience, a lot of positive things. That's really cool. But when they submit it to a applicant tracking system, here's what happens. They strip out all of the columns and it reads it left to right. So now look at what the actual applicant tracking system is. You went from being a Bachelor of Science in Park, Recreation, Sport, and Tourism to Bachelor of Science Weekend, right? This is literally how the systems work. They are going to make, this looks so confusing now. It doesn't make any sense. Work experience is information boots, ticket boots, and camper activities. So they just took this really great looking resume, made it unable for the computer systems to be able to read it and understand it. And because of that, you get put to the bottom of the pile. So have a version of your resume that is pretty, have a version of your resume that is straight left to right, basic formatting, easy to comprehend for the computers. Take out all the columns, take out all the pictures, take out logos, take out all that stuff, because it's just going to confuse them. So I think the people that are doing that are the ones that are in the envelope, having a really pretty resume, but then also having one that's functional.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen, okay, I'll rephrase. So Brian mentioned school logos. I've seen a couple with those like next to the school or the professional team they've worked on. I do think that makes it pop a little more personally. But otherwise, when it comes to kind of creative stuff, this makes more sense. I've seen some social media creative, graphic designer resumes. And obviously if you're in that field, then I think you can get a little crazier with your design, and you probably should. So I have a couple friends that work in graphic design, and yeah, their resumes are a little different. Obviously I would agree with Brian where you need to have two kinds, especially when you enter them in like that, but their resume that they're kind of, sending to somebody or handing a printed version is a lot more creative, and I think for good reason than somebody like I have some of my older ones pulled up that are pretty not creative. Obviously they're just like text on paper, but obviously they're organized and whatnot, but yeah, so that's, I would, and I don't know if we have any creative social media folks on, but I would say I think if you work in that field, you can definitely get a little crazier with your design and format. I will. So the creative resume media kit. I mean, again, it kind of depends what field you're in. I know. I'll just chime in on that real quick. Like a couple friends I know, like have a kind of, I don't know if I want to call it resume, on like some websites like Behance. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but like stuff like that where they put in like graphics that they've worked on. So folks can go look them up on there to see graphics they've done. Whether it is still graphic or even like videos or photography. So I think if you're in a field like that, then I think that it makes it a little more important to have something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, really good stuff. Appreciate that. Question that came in early on, what's more important, depth of experience or variety of experience? And I actually struggle with this with talking to our interns now, because a lot of people are really involved. And when I came up, it's like, hey, do you have 3 years of doing this internship with this group and you've shown growth there? Or do you have a year of internship at 3 different places? And so I'm interested to hear all of your thoughts. That's more like career philosophical than resume, but I think it kind of gets down to, some of the stuff that we're talking about.
I can jump in. I am a fan of getting experience. I don't know if I have a strong this is better than that, because I'm a fan of exposure to different areas of a department. So most of the areas that I have responsibility for right now, I did not work in directly. However, I either volunteered or built relationships with the folks who worked in those areas. And so I was able to gain some insight on what maybe the day-to-day took, or get an understanding of what I should think about when I think of those areas. So I don't have a strong, you need to do this one thing and specialize for 3 years, or get exposure to a few different areas. I think they both have merit depending on how you sell the experience you got. So if you didn't get an opportunity to really get in depth in anything, then I think you should, take a little bit more time, maybe 2 years of one thing and 1 year of another. If you can't find a way to really get a true understanding of what that is. But again, don't have a strong feeling on how long you should do something before you move on to learn something else, because I'm not sure how many folks have interest in navigating toward the chair or senior level administration, but there is no, you have to do this. You don't have to do compliance. You don't have to do marketing. You don't have to do academics. Like, you need to have an understanding of the entire system in order to do that. So I'm a fan of diversifying experience.
Yeah, I would second that. I think a lot of it comes down to how clear you are on what you want to do in the sports industry. I think you get a lot of people who are like, I love the sports industry. I want to work in the sports industry. I'm a sports management major, but they don't really know where they want to fit in. If that's the case, go experience, go acquire knowledge, go try this out, go try that out, go work for a minor league team, go work for a college athletic program, go experience things and try to figure out your own point of view and what resonates with you. If you have a really good direction, you feel really confident about where you want to go, then maybe you lean in deeper and start to go a little bit more advanced. Like, you do an internship, then you try to take the next level at that same organization, or you try to expand upon that and go deeper, or you actually advocate for yourself and say, I'd really like to learn these skills, and be very selective and intentional about your internship process. So I think it just really comes down to how close you are to knowing with some authority what it is you want to do. And there's still a good chance you're going to change. I mean, I started out as a biology and chemistry double major. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. And I switched over like my junior year. So you might pivot and change, but that's going to depend on, like, your steps will kind of depend on where you're at on that continuum. I didn't think I was going to use the word continuum tonight. So
That's
I don't know
big.
if
That's on the bingo
did I
card.
properly use the word continuum? I think that's the
definitely.
real question.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know if I have much to add. Brian and Tangela said a lot of good stuff there. I would probably agree if you are really young at the beginning of your career stages or whatnot. I do think getting experience in an array of different areas, even if it is short, would be beneficial, just to try and get a sense of bigger picture, and then get a little bit of each little area, especially if you don't know what you want to do just yet. I do think that would be probably what I would advise earlier on.
I actually do have something to add. I know we're kind of coming up, but Being strategic about the experiences that you want. So I started in student athlete services, which I looked up a bunch of folks who were in student athlete services or started in that area. And I knew that, 10 years from when I started, I didn't want to be, still like an academic advisor, which I loved advising, loved working with the student athletes day to day, but knew I needed to get some other experience. So I'll use the word finesse, but I finessed my way into other opportunities. So, I started shadowing the SWA at West Virginia, getting sport admin, secondary responsibility. We didn't have a program for secondary admin, but she knew I was interested. She had a lot of sports, so I got to do some of that. So I would say, definitely think about what you want longer term and make sure you diversify and think about how you strategically move from that opportunity to kind of where you're trying to go. So that's one thing I will say is be strategic with how you do. So don't just do 5 different things to do them. Think about how they will be applicable to going on and doing whatever that dream position or dream role, dream areas of responsibility would be for you.
Yeah, thank you. Very, really, really helpful. And my old boss here at Penn State, he always, whenever he met with any of the young professionals or interns, they'd say, "Oh, I love working in sports," and he'd go, "Well, you're working in marketing, or you're working in tickets, or you're working in development. It happens to be in sports, but what you're going to do every day is marketing or development or tickets, and that's important to know." So appreciate all that. One of the questions that I had, I think could go into a couple of the questions that have been asked in the chat. And the question was, how do you show your personality in your resume and kind of give people a taste of like who you are? And then some people asked about cover letters. So I don't want to go down the cover letter rabbit hole that much, but if any of our panelists have overall thoughts on cover letters and how to approach that, we would love to hear it.
I do. I'll go quickly though. I think your cover letter is an opportunity to tell a story about you, make yourself come to life. And what I mean by that is your resume is a 2-dimensional version of things you've accomplished, things you've experienced, things you've done. Do not just repeat it into paragraph form and call it a cover letter. Tell me a story, hook me, give me some interesting thing that you experienced. Give me some moment where you showed leadership. Extend upon your soft skills. Your resume may cover all of your hard skills, the things you've done, the skills you know, the experience you've had. Tell me about your leadership. Tell me about your work ethic. Tell me about your passion, and give me a story, something I want to read. I've read so many cover letters where it's like, I've read this before. I don't need you to repeat your resume in paragraph form. But if I read something that hooks me in the first sentence or two, now I'm interested. Now I want to spend some time with your resume. Now I want to look at your LinkedIn profile. Now I want to invest in knowing more about you. So if you can hook somebody by giving them a good story, the cover letter is a winning thing that not enough people execute on.
You've got some thoughts there. That's good. That's good, Brian.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was great stuff.
Declare it as so.
Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
I was going to say, and not, I know you don't want to go down this rabbit hole, Chris, but because I've had bosses that prefer to look at the cover letter than the resume, and everyone's going to be different too. Like you all will learn that as you get into the your career and whatnot. Like some folks are going to, my boss at Ohio State said I'd look at a cover letter before the resume, and then I have other bosses that don't even look at cover letters. But I definitely agree with Brian. Like from a personality standpoint, in your resume, I personally think it's hard to show it in there. I think you just put in there, the nitty gritty, throw in some figures, some stats on, to show some progress that you made at your stops. But then you use the cover letter to kind of show that personality. That's kind of my thought on those two.
Actually, Michael, you made me think of something, because I wasn't going to say much about cover letters because I do tend to lean toward, is it really long? And I'm just going to go skim the resume so we can talk in the interview some about maybe what you have on there. But I do like to use a resume to maybe elaborate on areas in the job posting that you don't show a lot of experience in on your resume. So like talking about how you leveraged whatever opportunity you're in to do a little bit more in something that you'll have responsibility for in the job that you're applying to, but still being concise and getting that across. So I think that's one thing that could make a cover letter unique. And again, to Michael's point, it's going to be hit or miss. You have folks who prefer a resume to cover letter and vice versa, but wanted to add that.
Okay, so you submit your resume for a job, and actually in a couple of the next sessions, we're going to talk about the job search, how to approach that, and interviewing. But for this sake of this conversation, you submit your resume to a job, then what do you do? This also can be a rabbit hole, but do you just wait to hear? Do you follow up? How do you follow up? What do you guys want to hear or want to hear from applicants? How do you approach that if you're in their shoes?
Don't send 50 emails.
Yeah.
Brian, here, I'll pass it to you.
No, you go. I mean, take it, run with it. I agree with you. Do not send 50 emails. I'll agree with you there.
Yeah, so I mean, you go through the process. Sometimes on the application, they'll tell you who specifically to reach out to if you do have questions, but then work your network is one of the things that I will say, and leave some things for Brian and Michael to elaborate on. But I would say work your network, especially, and I'll say athletics because that's the space that we're talking about right now. Similar to your references, you can put whoever you want. If I know someone that I've interned with or, have done emerging leaders or something with, 10, 15 years ago, I'm probably going to reach out to that person. So it's a similar piece, work your network. If you know someone who knows someone at the place that you're looking to go, they can put some fillers out, let them know your name, some of that. So that's what I would say, work your network. And now I won't take too much. Brian, Michael.
No, I totally agree with you. I would add, I spoke with a talent acquisition manager, director of talent acquisition for a pro team recently, and asked almost this exact question. So I'm not just going to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you what they said. And I said, so somebody applies for a job, what should they follow up? What do you want them to do? And she looked at me like incredulously, like, yeah, of course I want them to, because what I'm trying to judge in that first week after you've applied is who is just applying for jobs because they want to work for our team, and who is actually interested in this particular role, who really wants to do this thing, because I need somebody that wants to do that job. Like Chris was saying earlier, marketing, ticketing, operations. Like, I want somebody that doesn't want to just work for our pro team, that wants to do this job. And I need to know whether they're A, qualified, and B, interested. And if they follow up and they show some intention, I feel more comfortable in that process and their really engagement in the whole cycle. So she absolutely said, I want people to follow up. Now, to Angela's point, you don't want to do 50 emails, LinkedIn connections, slide into their DMs, like, then it gets creepy. So just be cool about it and know that if you keep it professional and you try to see if there's updates or there's anything else you can add to the conversation, then that can be very productive. You also, if they don't respond, everybody's different. It's a very subjective process. You could talk to 20 different talent acquisition managers and they might give you 20 different answers. So stay to best practices. Don't go too far in either direction, like completely silent, ghosting, or contacting them all the time. Try to have a follow-up process that you do every time so you get consistent with it. And you'll find that that really resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah. Just gonna kind of go down a couple details on what Brian and Latangela said. So okay, I'll kind of answer what Kaylee was asking in the chat a little bit. Because there's gonna be jobs where you do apply, and then if it's on teamwork or something, there might not be anybody to reach out to. And then you're kind of stuck till you get, till you get a phone interview or something. But if there is somebody to reach out to and you are really passionate about that job, and I do think you should, reach out relatively soon after you apply, and just say, you recently applied to this opening, list why you're passionate about the job, why you think you might fit. And it needs to be like very succinct. And then I will finish with, if there's anything else you need from me, please, don't hesitate to reach out and leave your cell and your email, and leave it at that. And I think, one follow-up, one email between, you know, when you apply and then hopefully a phone interview, I think is enough. I don't even know if I mean, you could, I don't know how people feel about shooting 2 emails off. I don't know if I would even do that personally. And then kind of going up back to something Tangela said with your network, like if you all are interning right now or volunteering under people, like definitely tell them where you're applying. Like you need to keep them informed and tell them where you're applying, because you have no idea where they might know people at. Like that's something I try and tell. Like I oversaw interns at Georgia and Missouri, and I always try to pound that into their head. Like you need to tell us where you're applying, because we know way more people than you think we do, and we can make some phone calls and you know help you, you know, in the process. So you need to keep folks that you've worked with and in the know on what you're applying for.
I jumping in on the connections piece. If you add or if you write a follow-up and you know say someone that you know in connection with maybe the hiring manager, that's fine. Just make sure it's not someone you know in passing. Make sure it's someone that actually knows you, right? So you can be like I was a GA at Oklahoma, so I can say, you know, oh, Josie encouraged me to reach out, and I can say that, right? Because he had a class there. He actually knows who I am and can speak to something about me. So if you do drop names, make sure that they can actually speak to something about you, and not just to kind of show, oh, I know, or I've, you know, witnessed someone in the hall, right? That you may have heard of. And then I see Jay Morrison 16 posted or asked a question about sliding into DMs and following people who work for the place that you're applying to. I think it honestly, I don't have a full answer. I think it depends on the place, what type of content do those folks post. So if they post, I would say if they post a lot of work related things, like if you follow, I put my Twitter handle on there. If you follow me on there, that's not creepy because I'm mostly posting about Central Michigan. I'm fire up chips and what our teams are doing, maybe some updated things about what's happening in the industry. But if you like found my Instagram, for example, that's not, because I don't really have a professional, I just have a personal Instagram. So that would kind of just be strange. So, and then again, falls into the same category of how many times do you follow up. I actually did just have a position open where someone, you know, connected with me on LinkedIn. Then they sent an email to the general HR office, sent me a few emails, sent some emails to our administrative assistant, which love the go-getter, you know, personality, but then it was just a lot. So it's just a balance of, you know, I saw the email, maybe couldn't reply, but just finding that balance in what you can sustain and show that you're trying to get after it, but still understand most of the time hiring managers have a lot of other things that they're navigating in addition to trying to fill positions.
We also, as managers, project your actions out to what you'll be like as an employee. And if you are messaging everyone repeatedly and you're all over the place and you're firing all this off, that's interest. It's a little bit too much. And I look at that and say, oh my gosh, if this person worked for me, it's going to be a headache. It's going to be nonstop all the time. So fair or not, it happens. So just make sure you're always representing yourself in this process the way you'd want to project you would be as an employee as well. I would say too, on your sliding into DMs, connect on LinkedIn, add a note to the, if you do a laptop, you can have 300 characters to add a note, explain why you want to connect with them, have a professional conversation. So don't do it as transparently as possible on a platform that's made for business communication, because that's what LinkedIn is. So get your profile set on LinkedIn, reach out to the people that matter and whatever job you're applying to, add a professional note in those 300 characters. And if they connect, you can start to have a conversation with them. It's just a better process.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Any final thoughts from the panelists before we kick it over to Chris here to close us out?
I don't think so. Sorry, Tangela, go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to say, feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn. always looking to connect people with opportunities or answer some questions. Sydney, I did try to get back to you, so I'll follow up again. I actually reached out, but always looking, because I don't think I have the opportunity that I have without people setting aside time for me and willing to pour in and share about their experiences. So I'm always looking to pay it forward and, you know, give my thoughts and opinions on things, and you can do with them what you like.
Yep, I was just gonna say the same, so don't hesitate to reach out on LinkedIn.
Yep. If there's any questions we didn't get to, I'm sure any one of the 3 of us, 4 of us, 5 of us, and more would be glad to help you out with any of these questions we didn't handle.
Awesome. All right. Tangela, Michael, Brian, thank you guys for your time tonight. You guys heard them. If you have any additional questions, hit them up, hit up Chris, Nicole, myself. We're happy to help and answer questions. Similarly, if you guys have any feedback on the session, Chris, Nicole, and I would be super happy to receive it. Our next call will be Monday, February 20th. Like Chris said, we're going to be talking about the job search, the internship search, how to kind of prep for that and looking for your next role. So shorter turnaround than usual. We'll see you all in about 3 weeks, and everyone have a great night.